The hum. Jason Meredith moved to the countryside to get away from the noise. He didn't want to hear anything ever again. No more subway rumbles beneath his feet. No honking taxis. No more upstairs neighbors stomping like elephants at 3 a.m. And no more of Natalie's tired voice telling him she needed time. Time. That's what he thought he was buying when he signed the papers for the cottage. Time and silence. The cottage was a lopsided two-story structure nestled between two mossy hills in a part of upstate New York where the roads turned to gravel and the cell phone service dropped off like a cliff. It had no internet, no television, and barely enough electricity to keep the lights on. Jason loved it. The first day was peaceful. He unpacked a few boxes, stacked firewood, and ate a can of cold ravioli by candlelight. As dusk settled over the hills, he stood on the front porch and listened. Not a single sound. No birdsong, no crickets. Just silence so deep it made his ears ring. Finally, he muttered as he shut off the oil lamps one by one. Goddamn finally. That night he slept like the dead, dreamless and heavy, as if the silence had wrapped around his body like a weighted blanket. The hum started on the second night. It was faint at first, like the purr of a refrigerator through a thick wall. Jason noticed it only because the silence had been so complete the night before that this new sound stood out like a crack in glass. He sat up in bed. Old house, he whispered to himself. Settling. But it wasn't settling. It was constant. A low, almost tonal vibration that seemed to come from nowhere. Not from a corner, not from the floorboards, from the very air. He walked barefoot from room to room, standing still and listening like a priest in prayer. Kitchen, pantry, upstairs bedroom, the bathroom, the guest room. It was everywhere. He pressed his ear to the walls. Nothing. Then the floor. Still just the hum. He held his breath and crouched, trying to catch a hint of direction. Nothing. The clock on the wall ticked past 3 a.m. He went back to bed, eyes wide in the dark. By morning it had stopped. The birds were chirping again. Sunlight came in heavy stripes through the lace curtains. Jason laughed aloud, more from nerves than humor. Must have been in my head. But that night, it came back. By the third night, it wasn't just a hum. It was louder, sharper, not mechanical, not natural either. That was the night Jason started recording. He dug out his old handheld audio recorder from the bottom of a box labeled Tech. It was scratched and dusty, but it still worked. He set it up on the kitchen table and hit the red button. It didn't have a display, just a blinking light to let him know it was on. He left it running overnight, hoping to catch the sound. He wanted proof it wasn't his imagination. He couldn't sleep. Not really. He tossed and turned for hours, pillow over his head, trying to block it out. The hum pulsed like a second heartbeat, vibrating deep in the base of his skull. When he listened to the recording the next morning, he almost dropped his coffee. There it was, the hum. Louder than he remembered. Throbbing. Almost rhythmic. Then something else. At 2:14 a.m., the hum stopped, and there were footsteps. Creak, creak, creak. Jason replayed the section 4 times. Then he went into the hallway and stood on the same boards. Jumped, shifted. Nothing sounded like what he'd heard. What the hell? Night 5. Jason couldn't take it anymore. The sound wasn't in his head, it was real. It wasn't the house, it wasn't the wind, it wasn't the woods. He needed to know. He filled a glass of water and placed it on the wooden floor in the middle of the living room. Then he turned off the lamps, pulled a blanket over his shoulders, and sat in the armchair across from the glass. The hum began at 1:27 a.m. This time, it didn't creep up. It came on like a light switch. One moment, silence. The next, that deep, vibrating drone. The water in the glass rippled. Jason's breath caught. His fingers clutched the edge of the blanket. It was real, something under the house. He watched as the surface of the water trembled in perfect waves, like something breathing up from below. Jason didn't sleep after that. He sat for hours watching the water glass. The ripples would settle, then spike again every few minutes. They weren't random. It was like something breathing. In, out, in, out. By 3 a.m., the hum stopped abruptly. The silence came like a slap. Then came the sound, not from the walls, not the hallway, but directly beneath his feet. A dragging noise, slow, deliberate. He stood up, trying not to make a sound, and moved toward the cellar door. The air in the room felt charged, like the seconds before a thunderclap. The cellar door creaked as he opened it. He winced. "Hello?" he called, half hoping nothing would answer. Silence. He grabbed the flashlight from the wall hook and started down. The wooden steps groaned under his weight. The flashlight's beam wavered over dust-caked walls and ancient jars on rusted shelves. Something skittered across the floor. Jason jumped. "Rat," he muttered. But his voice didn't sound convincing, even to himself. At the far end of the basement was the crawl space, a square opening no taller than 3 feet, sealed with a nailed plank. The hum had come from behind that plank. He crouched, breath shallow, and pressed his ear to the wood. Nothing. Then, tap. Soft, measured. Tap, tap, tap. Jason bullied up the stairs and slammed the cellar door.
He whispered, "You're just the wind. Old pipes. The earth settling." But the hum responded. Not with words, but with pressure. It filled the house, vibrating in his teeth, coiling in his stomach. Then, scratching. Gentle at first, then desperate. It came from behind the cellar door. Jason backed away. No, no, no. Something thumped once, hard, against the door from the other side. Then silence. His flashlight flickered. Jason didn't sleep that night, and when the sun rose, he packed a bag. But his car wouldn't start. The battery was dead, or drained, and the hum didn't stop during the day anymore. Jason decided to walk. He slung his backpack over his shoulder, tucked the hammer inside, and locked the front door out of habit, though he wasn't sure why anymore. The gravel road stretched ahead in both directions, pale and hazy in the mid-morning sun. 10 minutes in, the hum faded. For the first time in days, the pressure in his skull lightened. He inhaled deeply, greedily, as if surfacing from underwater. That's when he saw the man. Standing on the road's shoulder ahead, facing away, dressed in gray work clothes, still as a post. Jason slowed his steps. "Hey!" he called. "You okay?" The man didn't move. Jason approached, heartbeat rising. When he got within 10 feet, the man turned. He had no eyes, just smooth, pale skin stretched tight where his sockets should have been. Jason stumbled back. "Jesus!" The man opened his mouth, wide and slow. And then, the hum. Louder than it had ever been. Jason screamed and ran. Behind him, the hum surged like a wave. He didn't stop until the road bent and the cottage came back into view. The hum receded, but Jason knew it had followed him. Jason didn't move as the footsteps ascended from the basement. Slow, deliberate, each step groaning louder than the last. He backed into the living room, nearly tripping over the fallen recorder. Thunk. Creak. Thunk. He raised the hammer. "Stay back," he warned, though his voice quivered like a snapped wire. "I'll swing. I swear to God." The footsteps stopped just behind the door. Silence stretched. Then came the knock. Soft, polite, tap, tap. Jason, a voice whispered from the other side. It's me. Open the door. Jason's breath hitched. It was Natalie's voice. Warm. From
Jason, a voice whispered from the other side. It's me. Open the door. It couldn't be Natalie. She was 300 miles away, still angry, still taking space. I don't believe you, he croaked. You're not her. You're not real. A pause. Then the voice cracked, pleading. Jason, please. It's so cold down here. I've been waiting. He pressed his back against the wall, eyes wide. You left me, the voice whispered again. You left me down there. Jason screamed and swung the hammer blindly at the door. Nothing happened. The voice was gone. When he dared peek through the door crack, the stairs were empty, but the hum was back, and now it echoed inside his head. Jason didn't open the cellar door again that night. Instead, he sat at the edge of the fireplace, a bottle of whiskey in one hand, and the hammer still in the other. His flashlight was long dead. Every lamp in the house flickered now, as though the electricity itself was scared. The hum had become constant, no longer pulsing, no longer quiet. It saturated the air. A low, droning growl that pressed behind his eyes and buzzed in his molars. It didn't stop at sunrise. By mid-morning, Jason had made a decision. If it wants me, he muttered, then I'll find it first. He pulled open the cellar door and descended. The smell hit him first. Damp, rotten iron. He passed the shelves, the cobwebbed beams, the collapsed sacks of cement. The crawl space at the far end still had the plank nailed across it. Jason crouched, gripping the hammer in both hands. Each nail came out with a rusty screech. He half expected something to grab him from the darkness beyond, but nothing came. Finally, the plank dropped. Beyond it was a tunnel. Not man-made. The earth looked melted. The walls were smooth like cooled wax, the floor packed as if something had slid across it over and over again. The hum poured out of the tunnel like steam. Jason crawled inside. It stretched far deeper than it should have. Deeper than the foundations, deeper than the hill, deeper than the earth, he thought. He had no light, but the tunnel glowed faintly blue, like phosphorescent mold had colonized its edges. After what felt like an hour of crawling, he reached a chamber. It was round, almost perfect. No angles, no seams. The walls shimmered, and at the center of the chamber sat something he couldn't comprehend, a shape that wasn't a shape, a mass that looked like moving water held in place by will alone. It breathed, he stared, and it looked back. Jason, it said. Not with sound, but inside him. His nose began to bleed. What are you? He choked. The shape pulsed. We are the silence. Jason stumbled back. You broke the hush. The tunnel behind him rippled shut like a throat closing. He screamed. Jason's scream was swallowed by the chamber like a drop in the ocean. No echo, no resonance, just gone. He spun toward where the tunnel had been. It was gone, no seam, no opening, just smooth, undisturbed wall. The light from the chamber flickered dimmer now, growing colder with each breath he took. The mass, the thing calling itself the silence, pulsed once. You were not meant to hear. Jason backed toward the edge of the chamber. I didn't mean to. I came here to escape. I wanted quiet. The hum inside his skull spiked. His thoughts blurred like radio static. He dropped to his knees, clutching his temples. Silence is sacred, it whispered. You brought the noise. Jason shook his head violently. No, I didn't bring anything. This house, this place, it was already broken. The walls of the chamber began to shimmer with movement. Vague, humanoid silhouettes forming in the waxy surface, as if memories were leaking through. A man in a 1950s suit, sobbing into a hat. A child scratching at the walls, mouth sewn shut. A woman with no eyes screaming silently in a locked cellar. Jason backed further into the chamber until he felt cold stone rise behind him. A plinth, a sort of altar. On it was a mirror, cracked down the center, but still reflective. He didn't want to look, but he had to. Jason stepped up and peered in. It wasn't his face. It was something wearing his face, smiling wide, stretching the skin too far, eyes black as space, a humming void where the mouth should be. It reached for him from the other side. He screamed again and struck the mirror with the hammer. The hum stopped instantly. The chamber went black. Silence. For the first time in days, real silence. And then, the scrape of claws on stone, right behind him. Jason froze. He didn't breathe. The hammer hung useless in his hand, his knuckles white around the grip. The scrape had come from inches behind him, claws dragging lazily over stone. Scratch, scratch. He turned slowly, every hair on his body lifting. There was nothing, just the dark, thick and complete. Then came the whisper, not in his ears, not in his head, inside his bones. You saw it. Now it sees you. Jason backed into the center of the chamber. Where are you? He shouted, voice cracking. What are you? Silence. Then laughter. Dozens of voices. All Jason's voice. Older, younger, laughing, screaming, whispering, singing. Layered over each other like a broken chorus. A new tunnel opened in the wall, slowly, wetly. It peeled back like infected skin, revealing a narrow passage pulsing with blue light. Jason didn't want to go in, but something pulled him forward. Not physically, no hand, just will. Something greater than him. The tunnel bent sharply after a few feet, and the air changed. Warmer, damp, breathing. He passed alcoves. Crude shapes were carved into the walls, shapes of people, almost fossilized, their mouths open in eternal, silent screams. Some still moved. He dared whisper, "Are you alive?" One of the shapes twitched violently. Its eye, a single milky thing, rolled toward him. The mouth didn't move, but he heard the word. "Run!" Jason stumbled away, tripping, crawling, breath shuddering. Behind him, something unfolded. Not footsteps, not claws. A presence. The tunnel was narrowing now, too tight to stand. He scrambled forward on hands and knees, the hum starting again in full. Only now it was inside the walls. A face emerged from the stone ahead. Not carved, growing. It blinked. "Jason," it whispered, "you're almost home." He screamed and bashed the wall with the hammer again and again. The tunnel split open, and Jason fell. Jason landed hard on something soft. It took him a moment to realize it wasn't earth or moss or fabric. It was flesh. The ground pulsed beneath him, slick and warm, and the air was heavy with copper and rot. He scrambled upright, slipping in a shallow pool of clear fluid. He gagged, wiped his hands on his jeans, and looked around. The walls were covered in ears, thousands of them, human ears, animal ears, infant-sized, impossibly large. Some were stitched directly into the walls. Others grew naturally from the slick red surface, like mushrooms on a rotting tree. A few twitched when Jason moved. Many were scarred, one was bleeding. The hum here wasn't just a sound anymore. It was an environment. Each ear seemed to resonate with it, singing along in some warped, wet chorus. Jason turned to run back into the tunnel, but it was gone. The wall had sealed behind him again, smooth and unbroken. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." Then a new sound joined the hum. Whispers, thousands of them, all around. The ears were listening and speaking. One near his shoulder twitched violently and whispered directly into his ear. "She's still waiting for you, Jason." He jerked away. Another whispered from the floor. "You left her behind, alone, screaming." Jason clutched the hammer to his chest.
Shut up!
A third voice, deeper, closer. She called out your name, even when her lungs filled with smoke. Jason froze. "Natalie," he murmured. Then he screamed, loud, from the pit of his stomach. The ears recoiled, dozens of them curling inward like sea anemones. But when the echo of his scream died, the chamber fell quiet. Totally quiet. Too quiet. because the hum had stopped. Jason spun in place. The light in the chamber flickered, and then the voice returned. Not from the ears, not from the walls, but from inside his own throat. "You were the loudest of them all, Jason." He clutched at his mouth, but his jaw moved on its own. The voice wasn't his. "You broke the silence. Now you must carry it." The floor beneath him opened, like a wound tearing itself wider. Jason fell again into utter darkness. This time, the fall didn't hurt. He stood slowly, blinking into a dim gray glow that seemed to pulse from no source. Just ambient and wrong, like moonlight filtered through fog and flesh. There were no walls, no ceiling, just endless space. But in the center of it all stood a figure. Natalie. She was barefoot, her back to him, her long brown hair hanging in tangled ropes down the back of a gray hospital gown. She didn't move. Didn't breathe, just stood. Jason's mouth was dry. "Nat." She turned slowly. Her face was pale, too pale, and her eyes were rimmed in shadow. But it was her, somehow. Natalie. He stepped forward, dropping the hammer. "Is it really? Are you real? What the hell is this place?" She stared at him for a long time, then opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her lips moved, slowly, precisely, as if forming words behind a glass wall. But the air remained silent. No breath, no voice. He stepped closer. "I don't understand." She raised one trembling hand and pointed to her throat. Jason saw it then. A deep, surgical incision, sewn shut with thick black thread. Her voice had been taken. She began to cry, soundlessly, shoulders shaking. Jason ran to her and tried to hold her, but her skin was ice. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't know. I didn't think leaving would." Her eyes widened in sudden alarm. She tried to speak again, urgently mouthing the words. "Behind you." Jason turned and saw himself. But it wasn't a reflection. This figure had the same body, the same clothes, but the face was gone. Just stretched, humming skin, smooth and vibrating. It stepped forward. Jason stepped back. The creature's head tilted. The humming began again. But now it wasn't sound. It was thought. A pressure in Jason's mind. A scream so deep it crushed words into dust. Natalie grabbed his arm. Her fingers burned like ice. The fake Jason raised a hand. And the world shattered. Jason woke to pain. His ears were bleeding, warm trails running down his neck. The hum was back in full force now, but it wasn't just sound anymore. It was alignment, like his very cells were being retuned by it. The room he lay in was vast and circular, with black walls covered in dial-like mechanisms, knobs, levers, tuning forks, and rusted wires that pulsed gently with blue light. The ceiling was too high to see. The air smelled like burning copper and mold. In the center of the room was a stone slab, and on it lay Natalie, strapped down. Jason stumbled to his feet, body aching, head pounding. "Natalie!" She didn't move. Then, from the shadows behind her, something stepped out. A figure, tall and rail-thin, dressed in tattered robes that shimmered between reality and hallucination. Its face was a smooth, flat disc of skin, stretched over something bone-white beneath. No mouth, no eyes, no nose. Only a single tuning fork embedded in the middle of its forehead, vibrating steadily. It raised one long, skeletal arm. The dials on the walls began to turn, each at its own speed, some clockwise, some against. The hum increased in pitch, drilling into Jason's teeth, his bones, his thoughts. The creature pointed to Natalie. Her body arched violently as if struck by lightning. Jason screamed and ran toward her, but invisible hands pinned him in place. He couldn't move, couldn't even breathe. The hum grew louder. One of the tuning forks on the wall split apart, and from within it, a shape uncurled. A mouth, whispering in reverse, like a cassette tape played backward at high speed. Natalie's lips moved now, speaking something over and over, but no sound came. Then the entity turned to Jason. From its chest, A long, thin antenna emerged, stretching, vibrating, tuning, until the tip hovered an inch from Jason's forehead. He felt it instantly. Connection. Images flashed in his mind like strobe lights. Natalie's face behind smoke, her hand on the doorknob as he drove away, the silent scream from behind the glass, the cellar door open, the thing in the walls smiling with his voice, and through it all, the hum. A voice, not Natalie's, not his, whispered, "You broke the silence. Now you will replace it." Jason screamed, and then he began to hum.